Digital 410 proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Don Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II-based podcast, and we are back for another week. We are excited for this week because our friend Henry is back, and he's here to give us an update on his recent trip overseas. But you don't want to hear that from me. You want to hear that from him. So first and foremost, welcome back, Mr. Jeff Copsetta. Jeff, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Good. It's good to kind of have the three amigos back all at once.
Yes, we're back, and it's freaking awesome. But Henry, sir, how you been?
Yeah, hey guys. I've been good, man. Just working and doing all the usual stuff. But yeah, it's good to see you guys.
So you've been super busy, traveling the world. You got invited overseas by the fine people over at the We Have Ways podcast. And
correct.
I got to say, the after show posting from all the sources, all the people, all the communities to see what happened at that event. It's like, talk about fear of missing out. That looked like a great time. Give us the rundown, how things get upset and the travel and the whole nine.
Yeah. So when I spoke in New Orleans at the international conference back in November, James Holland came across for that because he spoke. He had a couple of things going on with that. I was a big fan of James and Al Murray's podcast, the We Have Ways of Making You Talk podcast. Hundreds of episodes. It's just an amazing podcast. I've really enjoyed listening to it. I mean, they get really granular on all kinds of aspects of World War II history, not limited to ETO. I mean, it's Mediterranean, it's Pacific, it's ETO. Just, it's really prolific and very engaging. And they have some great guests on there too. So I had listened to quite a few episodes of it. So it was kind of cool to know James Holland was going to be in New Orleans. And then, he came up and started talking to me after I had done my thing with Rich, Frank, and Saul David. And, I mean, this was like, imagine, it's a goofy analogy, but it was like being a guitar student and having Jimmy Page come up and talk to you. It's kind of what it felt like. But he ended up interviewing me for an episode of the We Have Ways podcast, like the next morning at breakfast, me and Saul both. But he said, Henry, I love hearing you talk, man. I love hearing you talk about your dad. Would you consider coming across to our We Have Ways History Festival next fall? And I said, yeah, sure. I mean, if you're inviting me, I'd love to do that. So
where is their festival held at? What town?
This year, so this year's the third time they've had it. I think the first time they did it, I'm actually not sure where they did it. This year, they had it at a place called Black Pit Brewery, which we stayed at the Silverstone Hilton. So that's where everybody stayed. That Silverstone is in the Formula One Silverstone circuit.
Okay.
Like literally the circuit runs right by the hotel. The hotel is part of Silverstone Formula One circuit. So that's where everybody was staying. And Silverstone, so Andrea, Jack, and I went over about 5 days ahead of time because we just wanted to do the sightseeing thing in London.
Sure. So
we did that, did the tourist bus thing, and saw some really cool sights. The highlight of that was taking Jack on the HMS Belfast, the famous cruiser, the British cruiser that it literally was moored as a floating museum just a few hundred yards down from the Tower of London Hotel where we stayed. But the We Have Ways Festival was about an hour and a half northwest of London. Okay. So we stayed in London, did our own thing, and just did the sightseeing thing, did that. And then Friday, the day of the beginning of the festival, we actually met Leighton. We took a taxi to RAF Northolt. Leighton met us there and drove us the rest of the way to Silverstone, where we checked into the hotel. And then my speaking engagement was that evening. It was pretty early on when the festival started. But there were probably So the way the layout of it was these really large tents, and then you had reenactors, reenactment groups. You had a tank arena with jeeps, towed guns, all kinds of other types of vehicles.
I assume there's like vendor booths for reenacting gear and all that stuff there as well.
Not as much as you might think. They had a really cool model tent, which Jeff, you would have loved that, man. I mean, the stuff in that model tent was just, it was hard for me to look at because I've been wanting to get back into building models. I just don't have the space to do it right now. But and then they had they called it the green room, but that was like the part of the building where speakers and families and stuff hung out, while people were between their
presentations,
gigs or whatever. But so not that long after Leighton drove me over, my family came over later, but Leighton drove me over because my thing was going to be at like 5:45 p.m. I spoke in a panel conversation with a guy named David Christopherson, whose father was Stanley Christopherson, who was the commander of the Sherwood Rangers, which was a British Sherman tank unit that fought at Normandy, well, all the way across Europe. Saw some really heavy combat. James Holland's book, Brothers in Arms, deals specifically with the Sherwood Rangers.
Cool.
So David Christopherson was the son of the guy who was the commanding officer. So he and I were on a panel together speaking on the legacy of war. Our thing was like an hour long.
What was the gist of your presentation? Kind of like talking about your role in preserving your father's legacy, or was it more historical based? What was your particular presentation about?
Well, it was Al Murray, who's James Holland's co-host, moderated the conversation, and it was the importance of our father. See, the thing about David's father, the commander of the Sherwood Rangers, he was the guy who never talked about it, where obviously, as you guys know, my dad did. So my father's story was well known. David's father left a journal and some letters, which ended up getting transcribed and published, and then James Holland drew upon those to write the book Brothers in Arms about the Sherwood Rangers. But growing up, our memories of conversations and that kind of thing, which, I mean, for David, there really wasn't, in that aspect of it, wasn't a lot to draw from because his father was pretty taciturn about it,
Sure.
Just didn't really talk about it much. But it was a lot of that. Some of it was historical based, but I mean, I can't say enough about Al Murray. I mean, his mastery of the subject. I mean, obviously they know David Christopherson because he's a personal friend, but his grasp of all aspects of World War II history is just so good. He was able to ask some really, some really good questions that kept the conversation going.
As someone who's frequently interviewed about your father, because we do podcasts, we interview people, they often ask us for example questions, which we don't have because we don't write any questions down beforehand. At least I don't.
Yeah.
But as the interviewee, do you find it kind of refreshing when somebody actually, as you were just saying, he knows so much about the subject, the topic, that you're not getting that he might actually come up with a new, fresh question for you to ponder opposed to the normal stuff that people might tend to ask if they're not as in depth on the subject?
Yeah, I think I would definitely answer yes on that. And it was an interesting comparison or juxtaposition with David because, like, one of the things Al asked me was, how have you guys with your father's World War II legacies, when did you become aware of it? How did you come to terms with, that kind of thing?
Sure.
And David kind of looked at me and I looked at him and said, look, let me go first because I can answer it really quick and I'll step out of the way and let David talk. And I said, with the old breed, the Pacific, it's there, it's public knowledge. And then I stepped aside and let David take the rest of that time. And, so for him, it was a more nuanced answer, of course, because the letters that his father, go ahead.
No, I'm just taking a breath. Listen.
Okay. The letters that his dad wrote that, kind of became the basis for his journal was published. It was called An Englishman at War. And I have not read that, but I am reading Brothers in Arms. I started reading it before the trip because I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be able to engage with David the best way I could. Super nice guy, probably about my age, maybe a couple years younger, but very nice. Well, no, actually, he was a few years older, but great guy, super nice. Whole family was nice. And it just made for a really good juxtaposition to have our different, his dad being the heart of heavy combat in the ETO, my dad's story well known for the Pacific. So, it was just a really good point counterpoint kind of thing.
Since we're on the subject of how this realization has affected you guys growing up, and as you're just stating, how is your son kind of taking all this stuff? I mean, first he got a trip, he went to the museum, saw you speak. He's seen, the interviews of his grandfather and all that, but now he's traveling across the world to participate in this, whether actively or as a close observer. How's this sinking in with him?
I really encourage him to be interested in the World War II history, but I don't push it.
Sure.
As I think we've talked about. That's a good question, because I think my wife told me something. There was a certain point. I mentioned something about Sledgehammer's grandson, and Andrew and Jack were sitting pretty close to the front. And I pointed out my wife and son are right there. And Al Murray just has this really delightful, like an English pub owner, just this avuncular, boisterous wit. And he's just really engaging. He's like, he's got an impressive mop of hair there, mate. So, Jack kind of stood up. Well, I mean, there were John McManus, who I hung out with for most of the weekend. It was fabulous to be able to do that. He told me there were probably 2,000 people in that tent. I mean, it was a really big tent, and well attended. But my wife told me later, after Jack kind of got recognized, and she did too, she said that kind of struck a chord. Like, it dawned on Jack, like, wow, man, my dad's up here talking in front of all these people about, it really seemed to make an impression on him.
I wonder if the geographical distance from his hometown struck a different chord, because maybe he's thinking, okay, we're in Alabama, my grandfather's from the area, he's a local, but to hear, maybe to live in that environment, okay, you kind of understand, but now you're literally on the other side of the planet and people have the same reverence for him. I wonder if that maybe struck a chord a little bit different to him, like, oh, wow, this is something.
I think it did, because, look, man, I mean, even though, like, the tank arena, okay, where they had some British tanks, they had a Sherman tank, which I really wanted to get a ride on, but it just couldn't happen. They had the Russian T-34, which I did. Jack and I got a ride. I mean, Jack knew the only way that happened was because I told Al, I'm like, Al, I really want to get a ride on either the Sherman or the T-34. And he said, we'll sort that out, mate. We'll make it happen. Well, I mean, it took him intervening, like, hey, can you give this? And the other people were getting rides too. It's not like only I got a ride. I mean, sure. I wouldn't have liked that. I would not have felt comfortable with that. Believe it or not, I wouldn't have. But yeah, other people got rides. But I mean, it's not like you just stood in line and everybody in line got a ride on the damn tank. Yeah. It was way more complicated than that. But I think it, again, I tried not to shove it down his throat about what it was all about. He gets that. But I think it struck a chord, man. I mean, I'll tell you something else that made an impression on him was, so right after we got done speaking, David and I went backstage and took off our little, boom mics or little wire mics we had.
Your Jessica Simpson
McManus
headphones?
Comes backstage. Do what?
I said your Jessica Simpson headphones.
Well, no, they were not headphones. It was just a little thing that comes. You really can't even see it.
Yeah, that's what, like Britney Spears and Jessica Simpson back in the day when they were doing all that dancing. That's how they would allegedly sing. Allegedly.
So we're taking that off and taking a little clip off and all that stuff. Well, John McManus comes backstage with this other dude named Matt McLaughlin, who wrote a book called The Cowra Breakout. He's Australian. He's a Guadalcanal tour guide. Got to spend some time getting to know him. Very, very nice guy. But John, had been in the audience, comes back there. We hug like, long lost friends, and just pretty much hung out together for the rest of the weekend. That was really cool. But while we were talking, then my wife came backstage because she'd never met John. This guy comes up and said, hey, there's a line for you to sign books. And John's thing was going to be later, so it really wasn't for him. I thought he was talking to John, and he was like, no, Mr. Sledge, I'm talking to you. So they take me through, across the festival site to where the bookshop, and they had a great bookshop, by the way, because obviously most of the people who spoke this thing have written books. But they had a table set up for me to sign, which I think Andrea posted pictures of that. But there were, look, to go back to your point of the geographical distance and to see that recognition of who Sledge was, man, I probably signed 75 copies of his book, which,
That's awesome.
My brother and I've talked about that because he sometimes gets asked to do it. To this day, I don't feel worthy to do it. It still feels weird, but I'm not going to tell people no, I won't do it.
Like, yeah, I'll sign in the back.
Well, believe me, I feel like I should, but it was just so many people who said they enjoyed what we talked about, and then after that, McManus and I were walking around like the next day, and the bookshop guy said, "Hey, Mr. Sledge, could you come in and sign some stock for us?"
That's cool.
So I probably signed 2 boxes worth there. So all total, maybe 75 copies. I don't really know, but
that's awesome.
It was cool. Just the thing that meant the most to me, and I'll tell you this, and we as World War II lovers will appreciate this. It wasn't just, I call it the gun show crowd, the over 50 males that you can count on them being interested in what we do. You know, you can count on it. There were so many young guys.
That's awesome.
I'm talking early 20s, mid 20s, who were like, "Oh, you've convinced me. Oh, and now I've just bought your dad's book, or I'm going to buy it, or I'm going to read it, or I just started reading it, or I'm watching the Pacific." Because we talked about that too. It's cool to see these young people who are really engaging.
Did anybody ask you if you had like a merch booth set up where they could buy your dad's book? Has that ever occurred to you, maybe to bring a few copies? Especially China Marine. A lot of people don't only know that one's out there.
Yeah, no, that didn't. I couldn't have, just because of luggage and the logistics, but nobody asked me that. And then they had so many copies of the book anyway.
Oh, yeah, because you were saying that the bookstore was there. So, yeah, that makes sense.
But, look, there's not just that part. It was just an excellent World War II event. Like the next day we walked around a little bit, like, you look out in the woods behind the fields where the tanks were and everything, and it looked like a Normandy. It wasn't a hedgerow, okay? There was no bocage, but it kind of had obviously that European feel to the woods that I don't get here in Alabama.
Yeah,
and there were some guys reenacting various British units who were bivouacked out there. One unit had a really good map set up. They're all in full gear, full kit. And people would come up and look at the map, and this guy would give this really excellent description of what they were actually, like the part of the Normandy campaign that they were actually reenacting. The guy his level of knowledge on it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
He probably spent 10 minutes describing every bit of it. Was Operation Wallace, I think it was. All the reenactors I saw were British. Didn't see any American ones, but did see some American vehicles like the Sherman tank.
Probably a lot of Jeeps, huh?
A lot of Jeeps, towed guns. Like I said, they did, which I'm sure you guys have seen this hundreds of times. I've never seen this, where they'd have a tank coming down the wood line 100 yards away, and then they'd have the guys coming up with the Jeeps and the guns doing, like, reenacting they had a 25 pounder or 17 pounder and smaller, and the gun crews are going into action, firing blanks, obviously. But you really got to smell the smoke and see, get that tactile sense of it, which I've never seen that.
Yeah. You say what you want about blanks. The tank shooting blanks still puts off a nice thunder boom.
Oh, for sure. I couldn't believe when the Sherman tank fired up. And it was cool just to even hear that engine run, because I think it was one of the ones with the radial engine.
Oh, wow.
Which I love, the radial engine sound. The smoke from that thing, and from the T-34 too.
I was at an event one year where World War II Armor had their long tom set up. And I'm in my truck, got my equipment on. I'm doing a podcast interview. and they're lighting that thing off, I think, once every 2 hours. And I'm literally in my Tacoma watching my windshield flex just from the blank coming out of this thing. I couldn't imagine a real payload, the amount of damage that compression does. But just from that blank shooting over the parking, I'm watching my windshield go, whoop.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
The last night of it, because this is one of my favorite parts of it. They do this thing. Apparently, they've done it every year. I think they call it Google Box. There's a reason for that term, and I never found out what it was. But what they do is they sit there and they watch various clips of the movies that we all love, as World War II aficionados. And they either poke fun at them or they kind of talk about, oh, this is really well done here. But the movie Where Eagles Dare, I mean, are we familiar with it? It's one of my favorites.
That sounds like it's more in Jeff's wheelhouse. I notably don't have the expansive knowledge of older movies.
With me?
My son loves that movie, and I love Clint Eastwood. I don't love that Clint Eastwood movie.
No, I get it. I love the movie because I remember being a 10-year-old kid seeing it first. But the reason I bring it up, their special guest that night was, remember the blonde-haired Gestapo officer? I seem to remember that the cathedral was on the other side of the square in Dortmund. Oh, but
yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been there. Maybe I was mistaken. And, he gets shot toward the end. They had that guy. His name is Darren Nesbitt. They had that actor show up and sit up.
He's like 150 years old.
He's up in his 80s. He's pretty old. But it looked great. You couldn't look at him and recognize him because he's got a beard and white hair. But when he talked, the voice was still, you could hear the voice.
Huh.
I mean, you could tell it, but they were like, hey, it's Darren Nesbitt. Darren Nesbitt, not Brian. Darren Nesbitt. Yeah, they had that actor show up. So they, he actually dropped a bunch of F-bombs. But I was
this cat,
but, it was a pretty cool conversation.
I'm looking through this cat's IMDb page. And obviously most of this is overseas work, but he's been working. His last project was in 2020. So this guy's been doing work actively, nonstop, since 1956 when he did The Adventures of Sir Lancelot.
I didn't know that. I mean, I remembered when being a kid seeing the movie and just his character was just this, this menacing. He had the red armband and the black Gestapo uniform. But yeah, man, Darren Nesbitt showed up and told a few jokes, and
he's been active. I'm not to lay into this, but he's been actively working. I mean, there's almost not a year. Maybe he had a span of like 2 years where he didn't have a project, but he's been actively working since 1957. That's tremendous.
Yeah, prolific. I heard somebody say that, like, they had to work out a contract, and people brought him in. They drove him back because where I was standing was kind of to the side of just outside the tent, where then way up on stage is where they were. But I saw him when he came in. You could tell he had family members drive him up really close to where they would walk him in. But I heard that, like, the deal they had to work out, they could only have him for 30 minutes.
Wow. Yeah,
they brought him in. They got their 30 minutes, and he was real engaging, told a bunch of jokes, and got pretty foul, honestly, but it was still funny. But then at the end of 30 minutes, he had
a heart out.
And then Al and James continued on just talking about other. They showed a clip from Band of Brothers, showed a clip from the Pacific, showed a clip from a bunch of British stuff I've never heard of or seen. So,
on the topic of the Pacific, how was that to see in a different narrative?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you. So the clip they showed from Band of Brothers was the one where they go into Holland.
Okay.
And you've got Bull Randleman, and it was when they see the Stug and they see the Tiger tank, and Johnny Martin jumps up on the British tank. I'm telling you, he's right there.
Yep.
Put it round through the.
I can't shoot if I very well can't see him. Now, can I?
Exactly. So,
are you coming along? Or are you getting off?
Exactly. Everybody's kind of like, and Al and James were like, they're pointing out some things about British behavior that's not necessarily true. So that was some of that, but
like Mystery Science Theater 3000-esque
Yeah, it's all in fun, but so they do that, and honestly, they kind of gig the scene a little bit, which I was surprised because they all love Band of Brothers. I mean,
No.
there's no doubting that they love Band of Brothers, but that one little scene, they kind of gigged on that a little bit. But then he's like, well, they made another famous American TV series, and it was the Pacific, and I'm like, oh God, what are we about?
Here we go.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect, but then they show where they're massing up to attack across the airfield.
Great scene.
And James is just like, is this not some of the most flawless television you've ever seen? He said, everything about this is perfect. I mean, and the scene went on for several minutes. They didn't cut it off quick either. And I mean, they were both just like, this is absolutely flawless. It's so well done.
Yeah.
And then they kind of moved on to something else.
Yeah, they
but
kind of
yes.
reminded the audience of how hot and miserable it was because they start out with Gunny reminding people to take their salt tablets. And then it's like, oh, never mind. We don't have enough time. Deal with it later. It's like,
yeah.
Oh, got to go.
And it was unseasonably hot, too. It was just like Alabama over there.
No really?
Rain. Yeah, no rain till the last day. And even then it was still hot. Temperatures mid-80s, which
for
mid-80s
them
here feels wonderful. They're expecting cool weather. It was like, holy shit, man, this is dang near unpleasant.
Especially being there in a button up and got a nice sport coat on. Or did you go more polo? I can't remember the photo. No, you had a polo. You went polo, didn't you? Like golf shirt.
I took my navy blue blazer expecting to wear it because, hell, I thought, we were packing for the trip. We thought, well, it's going to be in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we get there, and, like Leighton drives me in, and he's like, hey, mate, I'm going to Speaker here. Go to Speaker. And the guy was like, hey, I go down here, turn left. Yeah, right. Well, Leighton takes off the wrong direction. I'm like, dude, he didn't go that way. So he gets us squared away, and then I said, "Can you please drop me on? Because I don't feel like I was wearing khakis and nice shoes.
Yeah,
it was hot. And I was already tired from traveling that morning.
How long was that flight? Not to interrupt you.
No, the flight going over. Well, coming home it was like 8 hours and 40 minutes, I think.
That's a whole work day.
Obviously, going over was about the same thing. It was. I didn't feel it coming home, man. I felt it going over.
Is there a noticeable difference in the space availability to a seat in a plane that you're going to be racked up in for 8 hours versus a plane you get on for an hour and a half, 2 hour skip across a few states? Or are they still the same confined small ass seats?
Well, this was a sweet over and back on a 767. I just wanted to sit on the aisle. I didn't want to be stuck in the middle and have to go to the bathroom. I did not want to deal with that. So, I tell you, man, the first class sections on those jets, which we were not in, those first class sections are nice, but we were economy plus, I think. I mean, they paid for my ticket, I paid for my family's, and they wouldn't pay for first class. I wouldn't have asked them to anyway.
No, I was just wondering. I didn't know if planes that they intentionally used for an 8 hour flight was literally just bigger to accommodate that longevity time versus a Southwest flight you would take 2 states across, which are awfully small.
The plane's bigger, but there are more people on.
Yeah, that's true.
You've got like 2, 4, 2. I think I can't remember. It may have only been 3 seats in the center aisle, but yeah, I mean they stuff them with as many people as they can get in there. So,
I miss the good old days. Remember, how tall are you, Henry?
I'm 5'8", 5'8.5".
Jeff, how tall are you?
Jack's 5'10". I mean, he's taller than I am.
Jeff,
how
tall?
5'11".
5'11", yeah.
5'11".
Remember the good old days when we'd walk on a plane and a flight attendant would see and say, yes, you're tall. How would you like the bulkhead seat? Right this way. Now it's, yes, you're tall and lanky. How would you like the bulkhead seat? That'll be $50 upgrade. It's like, I miss the old days. Just being 6'5", man, they would see me coming and like, come here, let's give you some leg room. We'll put you in the emergency aisle.
I mean, sitting where we sat, you would have been miserable.
Yeah.
If you're 6'5", you would have been miserable.
Anytime I have to use the head and I take a picture because I'm like folded in half, it's smaller than being in a camper. Yeah. Being 6'5" and regular, it's horrible. So I couldn't only imagine. That's why I asked. It's like, 8 hour flight. Oh. So, but yeah.
Well, when, like back when my mom was alive and Hollywood, we went out there, she could kind of get away with saying, well, I don't think we we might have flown first class with her because she demanded it. Well,
Yeah.
I would never do that, but she was like, and she was pretty old at that point too.
Well, what she got to lose, right?
Yeah. So then they accommodated us, but so like I think once we got the bulkhead seat, which like when we're filing onto the plane, we're looking at the bulkhead seats, just going, "Oh my God, it would be so nice to have that." But that's the first time I've flown overseas, since probably '07.
Yeah.
Really long time for me to fly to Europe.
What sort of touristy sightseeing ventures did you do in your off time?
Well, in London, we saw the Tower of London. One of the things, we saw Piccadilly Square. Didn't go to the Imperial War Museum and there's a reason for that, because I was kind of trying to soft pedal the World War II stuff in London because there were a lot of things my wife wanted to see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for the sake of your families. Okay, this is all of our vacation.
I wanted them to do what they, the only World War II thing that we did in London was I took Jack to see the Belfast.
Yeah.
And that was great. Everything else was not, like Tower of London, walked by Buckingham Palace, didn't tour it. Saw the guards marching around. That was pretty cool. Of course, they were burning up in there.
Oh.
At the Tower of London, you see the guards with the big fur hats, and they're dressed up in their red coats. And I talked to some other like living history presenters at the Tower of London, and they were, the young fit lads. They're serving military. They're up for it. But every 20 minutes, a person would go up to these guys, take their temperature, and hand them water.
Yeah.
And this gentleman I was talking to who worked there, he was dressed up in some kind of, medieval costume. He said, we've had guys fall out before when it's this hot.
Oh, I can imagine.
Normally it's not an issue.
Yeah.
But Tower of London was very interesting. There were things down on the waterfront. The Tower of London Hotel was where we stayed. London Bridge was right there with its big towers, the drawbridge that would lift up. We wanted to tour that, just couldn't make it happen. But did lots of other things. Like I said, Buckingham Palace, we walked around that. Did not take the tour of that because that's booked up months in advance.
When you see some of those larger the landmarks from outside, do they uphold to your expectation, or is it kind of like when you first see the castle? Obviously, these are real buildings, but the American equivalent is growing up. You always see that commercial where they put the camera on the ground at Mickey Mouse, and the castle looks super big, and then you show up and say, "Wow, that thing's 12 and a half feet tall." Was there anything?
Well, Big Ben, which is this iconic. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong; it's totally beautiful, but driving by it on the tour bus, the open tour bus with the open second deck there, which the weather was perfect for that. You see Big Ben and it's like, man, it doesn't look like the clock is beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. It's ornate and well maintained, but it's not that tall.
I guess by today's standards, not at all, but I guess back when it was built and they're doing it on rickety bamboo scaffolding, it's like, oh, wow, that's a feat. But
you look at it and it's like, wow, that's Big Ben. It's beautiful, but it's not nearly as statuesque as you would have expected. But we did this big Ferris wheel called the London Eye, I think it's called.
Yeah, I think they got an equivalent out in Vegas.
Yeah, beautiful view of the Thames River and just all kinds of stuff like that. We did the riverboat tour, which that was fun. Still so hot though, but.
Hot. No, I was trying to think of a follow-up question about, World War II related in the area, but you pretty much covered that. You kind of let your family have a little bit of a break from that.
But look, riding around on the bus, we saw Hyde Park. We saw all these other iconic places. So we passed a cathedral that you could look at the pockmarked walls. And they tell you when you got your little earphones in that, like, this is one of the few buildings left in downtown London that has bomb damage. And you could really see it. It was near Westminster Abbey.
Did they have any references or even maybe a little... Obviously, the tube system through London is huge, but do you know, have they ever kind of glassed off one little corner of it to commemorate the time spent down there during the air raids that you know of?
had that question in my mind because they talked about, we never did see, like we never rode the tube. We just didn't have time. We walked everywhere or took the tour buses in London and London proper. But I think I had that question in my mind because that they talked about how, well, the tube was basically an air raid shelter for the women and children and the old men, when the bombing really started. And I'm sure somewhere they have done that because it's just so talked about and so much a part of their culture that I can't imagine they wouldn't.
No, but you would figure they got to have miles of just areas of the tube that they don't use anymore just because of progress, that they could easily just block off 100-foot section of it and put some lights and displays and a few signs in there and make it into a time capsule. Which
I hope they've done that. I honestly hope they've done that. I just don't know on that. But, London was cool, but I no desire to live there. And it's so unlike the rest of England that we saw.
Obviously, it's more congested, but what other... I guess let me ask you this. Is it, as an American, when you go over there, is it kind of surprising how close everything is? The only reason I make that suggestion is whenever, because especially down here in Florida, we have a lot of European tourists and all that, and you see them on videos and stuff where they're surprised how spread out everything is. Like, oh, wow, people here drive 45 minutes to go to a grocery store, whereas over there, everything's within walking distance. Is that really noticeable while you're there?
What I did notice was, like, we would meet people. Like, when Jack and I were on the Belfast, there was a guy who was obviously a dad with these two young men who were his sons. And we started talking about the Belfast and just different. And I'm telling you, man, Brits so engaged with their World War II history. They were so passionate about it. But to speak to your question, more than once somebody would refer to something that was like 30 miles away. And they would talk about, that's a different culture up there. That's totally different.
That's my commute to work.
I'm like, man, I drive 80 miles, in my job every day. Don't even think about it. I mean, it's or 100. I mean, so yeah, I mean, like 20 miles over. And the other thing, it's congested. So like Leighton told me, he said, I don't drive in London. He says, if you guys can Uber 14 miles out of London, I'll pick you up, but I don't drive into London. And I get why. I understand that.
It's like driving in New York City.
People just everywhere and, little bitty cars, motorcycles, motorbikes, huge buses, double-decker buses, tourist buses, regular buses. It's just, you've got to have nerves of steel to drive in that. And it's on the left-hand side. Everything's the opposite.
Sure.
It's, but yeah, like to go 20 miles here in Florida, Texas, or Alabama is nothing.
Yeah.
Over there to go 20 miles, man, that's something.
Yeah, my height when I was working computers and radio, the radio station was 33 miles from my house. So between that and my computer job, I was putting anywhere from 130 to 200 miles a day on my truck. That's why I was burning through them so quick.
Yeah.
It saddens me that you didn't get any cool air, because if there's anybody who... You got three guys on this podcast, and each one of us live in states that are just ungodly hot right now. And the fact that you could have had a nice 70-degree day, and it just yanked away from you.
Walking around seeing the reenactors, these guys are dressed up in British wool, and I don't think I saw anybody dressed in American gear. I think it was all Brits. I mean, they were suffering.
Well, Jeff can tell you firsthand, that's the advantage of doing Marine Corps impression. I remember my first event ever. I'm out there, my HBT cotton's got a nice cotton cover on my helmet. The sun's not shining down. Meanwhile, the airborne guys and the guys in the wool are dying. Their helmets are hot from the sun. I got a nice cover on it, and they're all hiding in a tent pulling water. I'm like, it's not that bad out here, but they're all in the wool with the... It's like that's the key advantage to the Marine Corps impression in hot environments, is it's a more breathable uniform.
Well, and half the buildings don't have air conditioning. Like the green room, no air conditioning in there because they typically don't need it.
Yeah. That's like California. When I moved out to Long Beach and lived with my dad, his Long Beach bungalow was close enough to the ocean it did not have central air. He had a portable air conditioner that we'd kick off maybe for a week in the summertime, but the rest of that you didn't need it because the wind would just blow in off the cold water.
That's crazy.
But now it's like,
I will say, I mean, the T-34 was, I'm around cat machines all day
I'd
long.
say you're around tractors all day.
But I'm telling you what struck me, heavy equipment today is so refined.
Mm-hmm.
Compared, like this thing was a living, breathing dragon.
Yeah.
I mean, because we were both standing up in our respective turrets, because there are really no seats down in the belly of the tank. The driver had a compartment, but you're standing up in it when it stops to turn left or right. You're jerking
Like
around.
a city bus standing up with that cord.
Oh my God, it's loud. You've got that V12 just rumbling away, exhaust everywhere. It's just nuts.
Thanks for bringing that up, because people don't think about that. Kind of like when we watch Band of Brothers, it would never occur to us, but the Pacific so gratefully reminded us about what people go through environmental wise. And you're watching these old clips and you see these Shermans rolling around the street and they got like 30 guys, like the scenes you see in Band of Brothers. They got just 2 platoons stacked on a Sherman tank. As somebody who's been lucky enough to ride on multiple of those, that whole back deck is just one giant exhaust grate, and they're sitting there idling, and that diesel fume's just rolling out. I almost got carbon monoxide poisoning one day from standing on the back of those too long. So you don't think about that when you see them on the newsreels and them just sitting up there breathing that crap in for.
I think I read a memoir years ago of a German Panzer commander.
Yeah.
Like Carius or somebody. I can't remember. It was one of those Stackpole publishing books. And there was a guy, a German tank crewman, like fell asleep on the back deck and actually died from exhaust fumes.
Because it literally just comes up out of that grate. There's no exhaust pipes down on the bottom, because obviously you're driving through water. You don't want to get back up and get water through your exhaust. So it all just comes out of the top.
But that T-34 was just like I said, I just kept thinking of a fire-breathing dragon, which is a goofy analogy, but just so rough and so loud, and the jerking motion of turning, and it was a really unique experience.
Jeff can speak to this, because when he worked at the museum, they had an alligator, they had tanks, they had a landing craft. We often forget how rudimentary that crap was. I mean, it was there to perform a function, and that was it. When you look at some of this stuff, you're like, oh, wow, this thing really wasn't much to this. It's like, surprised they got half those guys there.
Yeah, they were. I mean, they were built for 18, 19-year-old kids to be able to keep going in the field with, bare minimum tools. I mean, they were just utilitarian. So, yeah, there's nothing about comfort in a tank in any kind of armored warfare. And I really, when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on a tank. I wanted to be armor, Patton and all that great stuff. These visions of grandeur of me up in a turret one day, in the middle of the desert on top of an Abrams, and luckily my recruiter talked me out of that. He's like, dude, you're too smart to be on a tank kind of thing. So luckily, but I really, at the museum, here I got a real firsthand look at because I used to have to do everything on that M3 Stuart and training new crews, and I, typically I would drive it if it was in a parade or public event, because I was obviously an employee. You don't want volunteers doing that. But yeah, it really kind of gave me a firsthand look at, man, you're just so vulnerable. And, when you got a top speed of like 35 miles an hour, it's a 7-cylinder radial engine in these Stuarts. Super loud. You're basically, your seat, if you flip a 5-gallon bucket over, like at a Home Depot, if you flip it over upside down and sit on it, that seat is bigger than what you've got inside of the turret. For both sides, for the TC or loader and gunner. And the drivers, you're more comfortable in a Bobcat today, skid steer, than you ever were inside driving one of those Stuarts. So, yeah, you're right. And, I mean, they have mufflers. The exhaust typically should only be coming out of those mufflers. But tanks are kind of like helicopters. If they're not leaking, they're not running. So that vent, while that was really meant for more of an intake and for it to breathe, because it's probably just kind of like, it's probably got some leaks in the exhaust here and there, and some cylinders, or, so it's everywhere. And I remember, if you stop and idle for too long, it does start leaking into the troop compartment.
It's kind of like, have you guys ever had the sad disadvantage to have to ride in a car with the rear windshield broken? You don't put much thought into it, but my brother, his rear windshield got broken on his Dodge Omni back in the 90s, like an 84 Dodge Omni.
Great car.
Which looked like the Chevette. It was the hatchback, but that back window got broken. And so when we were driving to my mom's in Kentucky down the interstate, you don't think about it. But aerodynamically, what happens to the air when it gets to the back of your vehicle? It curls in.
Yeah.
And so we got like an hour away. We had to stop somewhere. We had lightheaded because it was just carbon monoxide blowing through the back. And kind of like when those tanks and all that heavy equipment sit still and the wind's just stagnant, it just kind of, you get that same feeling.
That kind of takes me back to my childhood. I mean, I basically grew up traveling across country on vacation in the back, not in a seat, but in the back of my dad's 9-passenger station wagon, right? So had a tailgate, a little 88 Pontiac Safari. I think they called the dark blue, the wood grain. And that back window was always down, and I could run around and do whatever back there, Of course, this back in the day when it didn't matter. But
yeah, that's why my parents, they made their transition from the station wagon, and we got a Chrysler Voyager that still had the fake wood grain. And when we drove from Kentucky to Florida, they would just take the back seat out and lay down sleeping bags. And us kids, we would just pass out. But same thing, if that thing would have flipped, he would have had 6 kids rumble. No seats, no seat belts. We literally took the seat out and just put blankets down and drove for 17 hours. Same thing. It's craziness.
Those are the days, man.
Yep. Nowadays, you got to have a kid seat until they're 8.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad my kid was older by the time those things came in. So all in all, the round trip, everything went well. You didn't have any like airline nightmare stories or anything like that?
No, well, we got back Monday night a week ago tonight. Hit Atlanta. We had to go through customs, but we still had to get on a plane to fly to Birmingham. Well, they got my wife's bag and my son's bag, got them loaded. My bag apparently got put on a later flight from Atlanta to Birmingham.
What do you need a bag for?
It never came in on the carousel. We were staying there at the carousel. We never saw my bag, so had to report it. They had to file a claim on it. Ended up getting it 2 days later.
You know what I heard? I saw a video, and I never thought about this before, but you know how, like, growing up in the day, like, if you went skiing or snowboarding, you just get a new lift pass, and by the end of the winter, you had, like, 7 or 8 of them, right? Mm-hmm. I guess people do that when they travel. They leave their little tags on the baggage, kind of as a reminder of where they've been. And I never thought about this, but I was watching a video where they're behind the scenes in an airport, and they said, well, sometimes you put your bag on a conveyor belt and you got one of those old tags on there, and that gets scanned. And a lot of times that's why people's baggages get sent the wrong place, because they have 33 tags from previous trips, and the wrong one gets scanned.
I kind of wondered about that.
So it behooves you to take that crap off and just throw it in a memory drawer somewhere instead of leaving it piled up on it, because I guess it doesn't happen a lot because the codes tend to change. But every once in a while, I guess if you're a regular traveler, that one gets scanned, and all of a sudden now your baggage is going to L.A. on that trip you took 2 months ago.
We had a layover before we could board the plane and fly out on the 767. We actually got held over so long we thought the flight was going to be canceled, because apparently when the plane had come in, somebody had taken a picture of the wing and posted on social media that something was flapping on the wing and it was dangerous.
Boy.
So, of course, they're out there taking the damn wing apart to make sure nothing's wrong with it. Well, they told us all this later when they announced that, okay, we're now ready to board. And we were delayed like 3 hours.
They should have got on the headphone and said, whoever Instagram account so-and-so at yada, 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 thanks. You're the reason we sat here for an hour because your post.
Well, and because they said something like this, the mechanics can't go out there and look at it and go, you're good, you're fine, take off. It has to go all the way to Delta.
It's a liability.
So they did that, and then we get on, and we're buckling in, and all the stewardesses or flight attendants are doing their thing. Then they had to delay us again because one person said, okay, I'm out, I'm not going.
Oh,
they got bumped or whatever. They volunteered. They have to, you cannot fly with luggage where the person has gotten off the plane. So they had to do a hand search through all the baggage of this 767 to get that one guy's bag.
It's a navy blue Samsonite. That narrows it down.
Well, we finally, all things considered, man, remarkably smooth. Expensive. The exchange rate is not favorable to the dollar.
No, it's going to get worse, but we won't get into that.
It felt great coming home. I mean,
Yeah.
wow, cheap American food now.
Yep. I'm so tired of spending good money on bad food. I try to cook at home as much as I can now.
Yeah, well, I'm with you there. But
Real quick before we get into what to read, and I just want to remind everybody, if you want to support what we do here at the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, please head over to WTSPWWII-EP-164.com or D-410.com. Click on that Patreon link, sign up, subscribe. It's $1 a month. There's a couple other plans on there, but we're perfectly happy with the $1 a month. And while you're on our website, you can click and order the What's the Scuttlebutt t-shirt, stickers, and Jeff's favorite, the mug. He wants to be the true spokesman for the value and the quality of our mug. He travels around with this mug like Tom Hanks traveled around with the volleyball, and it's just as durable, if not better. He's singing the praises. And so he highly suggests you head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, click on that merch link, get yourself a coffee mug in multiple colors. Henry, while you're here, you want to give our patrons an insight on what you're going to donate as part of our giveaway? And there's 2 of them, and we're going to split them up over 2 different months. And we've been hinting about this, and now's the time we're going to let you explain to the fine people. So if you're not a member of Patreon, head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, click on Patreon, sign up. Don't matter which plan. As long as you're an active member, you're enrolled. And so, Henry, please, Jeff and I are both excited about this, and if you could share with the audience.
So it is a print done by Valor Studios, 2 prints. One is called Off the Line, which shows the Marines, one of whom is my dad, of course, and his other buddies from K-35, walking. It's kind of a collage of different pictures, but it's walking past on the airfield. They've been pulled out of the line momentarily, or for a brief respite. You see Corsairs, you see the Umer Brogel behind them being shelled. You just see this. It's a great collage of just different things that you would see. Yeah, that's Jeff's got it right there.
It's a beautiful print.
I actually that piece of artwork was done back in 2010. I was a consultant for Valor Studios for that. Adam Makos and I kind of worked together to come up with an idea, and then they hired a person to paint it. And then the other one is called Off the Beach. Same scenario. Adam and I worked together. I was a consultant for that painting, and it's Matt Hall painted that one, and it's a scene of the LVTs coming up on the beach. You see my dad and some other K-35 guys going ashore. Beautifully done. Got Hellcats strafing the beach. You see other LVTs. I mean, it's just a great beach landing scene print of Pacific action. So Off the Beach, Off the Line, 2 prints. And I have a copy of each, and I believe I sent you guys.
You, Jeff, and I both have.
I
have them as well.
So I have these. These were left over, and you asked if I'd be interested in donating them, and I said, yeah, sure.
And so we figured to give our audience more chance to win. Well, 2 out of X amount. Instead of giving them both to one person, we're going to split them up because they are available through Valor Studios. They have a select few left, and they are not a set when you purchase them. So we're not breaking up a set by doing this. They're just 2 different prints, same theme. And so we want to give people more chance to win. So we're going to stack them kind of like we did with the coffee. We're going to do one month and one the other. And we're going to put more details up on the website. We want to give people plenty of time to sign up. This is our first episode. We've announced what they are, so we're not going to do it right away. We're going to, wait a little bit and give people time to sign up, but we're excited about that. Unbeknownst to you guys, I did a drawing last week, and one of our existing patrons won another one of our autographed M blocks plus some decals. I sent those out, and so we try to do that from time to time as a thank you for everybody supporting us. I'm going to try to get together and do some more Patreon exclusive content that we can post. But as a thank you from us to you guys for supporting what we do here, that's our little thank you for the next few months, and then down the road we'll come up with another giveaway. So thank you, Henry, for that. Before we get into the books, do either one of you have any plugs we want to get out of the way before we get into our books?
I do, Jeff. You want to
go? Yeah. So last week I had mentioned that I was going to be a guest on Snafu Pod that I had to postpone to this coming week. So 2 days from now, let's see, it'd be Wednesday the 20th. I believe it's 7 p.m. Central. I'll be on Snafu Pod's podcast briefing episode. If you're familiar with Snafu Pod, he is all B-17s. Oh, I can't wait. But then apparently he also does these debriefing episodes where he'll have a guest on and we'll talk probably just all things World War II. So yeah, really looking forward to that. That's the next thing I've got really coming down the pike, other than really looking forward to finally getting to meet Scott Gibson the end of this month at a banquet in San Antonio. So that's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of good pictures and content should come out of that.
Henry, what do you got coming up?
Working on my manuscript. I've mapped out a plan of action with John McManus on how I'm doing my third draft, worked in Richard Frank's suggestions. More to come on that. Talk to the guys at Library of Congress. I'm not sure where that's going to go. Okay. They want to do a Eugene Sledge collection.
Cool.
Probably what I discussed with them was a photograph that I have, the letter that I have that he wrote to my grandmother coming off Peleliu, and then the Bible. Okay, those are the three items that they would call the E.B. Sledge collection. Not sure where that's going to go. Another story on that. There've been some wrinkles, but I don't want to get into that. But the We Happy Few 506 guys, meaning Matt and Leighton, have been working with them to put together a symposium for spring of 24. It'd be kind of a similar to the World War II International Conference, that kind of thing.
Sure.
They want me to be at this thing. We'll see where that goes. April of 24 is being discussed. More to come on that. Saul David and I are supposed to do a Zoom call this weekend. He is trying to, there's a British TV producer. We've already done one Zoom call. This guy apparently wants to do a documentary on devil dogs.
Hell yeah.
So if he can get the funding, then it will happen. And it could be intriguing, some intriguing stuff going on with that. If he doesn't get the funding, it won't happen. You know how it works.
Yep.
So, but Saul and I didn't get to talk as much as we wanted to at the We Have Ways Fest, but we're supposed to Zoom on Saturday. But I actually got, I don't know if you guys have ever heard, this gentleman named Dan Vermilia emailed me today. They are doing he is from the Eisenhower National Historic Site in Gettysburg. He's friends with our buddy Jared Frederick.
Yep.
They, in 2020, September of 24, they are doing a World War II theme kind of event, weekend, whatever you want to call it. He's inviting me to speak at that. Jared will be there. I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. That could be fun. I definitely want to talk to him. The only thing is the We Have Ways Fest next year may be at the same time as that.
I gotcha.
So we'll see what happens with that. But
so basically, I don't have anything coming up until November. I'm going to be hopefully in Alabama up your way at Fort Morgan for the 80th anniversary of Tarawa. It's a living history event put on the Alabama Marine Corps League, put together by Galen Wagner over at Fort Morgan, Alabama, and that is the November 3rd through the 5th. And then I got an invite to an interesting thing. It's a Battle of the Bulge event that's being held up in Mills Historic Park up in Alabama as well, Beatrice, Alabama. And that's in January. Beatrice?
Beatrice.
Beatrice, yeah. It looks like beet rice, but yeah, Beatrice.
Hang on. Where? Beatrice. I'm curious. That sounds like Blount County or
that
something.
Says Mills Historical Park up off of Highway 265.
Beatrice, Alabama. Okay, that's 118 miles north. Well, hang on. I'm looking on maps.
That just came out. I posted a link on that on What's the Scuttlebutt Facebook page. They're looking for people interested in doing that event. I think this is a year one or maybe a year two event.
Okay, that's down. Is that South Alabama? That's what it looks.
I believe so. I don't know. Like I said, got invited to this group today. I don't know a whole heck of a lot of it yet, but
Yeah, that's southeast or that's southwest. Okay,
It'll
it's
be
about 2 hours from me.
it'd be interesting to see what kind of cool weather they get up that way in January. Hopefully it's not too warm of a January.
Yeah,
But
so they're doing a Battle of the Bulge event.
yeah, I guess they're kind of anticipating hopefully to see some snow. I'm not sure. But Jeff, before I forget, we have a mail call letter, and before we get to the books, I almost until Henry mentioned email or mail. I almost overlooked mail call. So if you would take the lead and read the mail call for this week, and if you have an email questions or comments for the show, please email us at mailcall@WTSPWWII-EP-164.com.
Okay, yeah, this one comes from arguably maybe one of our bigger fans. It reads, "Hey, Don, Jeff, and Henry, although he is on a small hiatus. I recently finished reading Alex Kershaw's The Longest Winter. And firstly, what a great read. Secondly, I've been wondering ever since I finished it how it hasn't been adapted into a screenplay yet, considering the great book-to-movie adaptations we have seen since Band of Brothers came out in 2001. The book is so detailed, well-researched, and so wonderfully written, you can practically visualize what's happening before your eyes. That speculation led me to the following question I would like to ask you guys. Is there a book about any war campaign, specific units, or stories, etc., that you would like to see be adapted into a movie television series, with the underlying condition that is being, quote-unquote, done right? It is, as always, a pleasure to watch and listen to the pod. Keep up the great work." And this comes from Camilla over in Denmark. Don, you just held up a cover. I've had it back here to kind of hopefully be a reminder of the mail call for you. I have not read The Longest Winter, but I want to actually this winter. I've read some of Alex Kershaw's stuff, and it's fabulous. I guess I'll go first to answer the question. What's a book that we'd like to see, made into a movie or a TV series? And I'll be honest, I have to say that to stick on that miniseries theme, Band of Brothers, outstanding. The Pacific, every bit as good, maybe better in some other aspects. We're all real excited for Masters of the Air to finally come out on, I guess, if you're an Apple person.
Yeah, right.
I still haven't even been able to watch Greyhound yet, so it's probably going to be several years before I get to see Masters of the Air. The Navy version to that, maybe a Navy counterpart to those miniseries, I think would be tremendous. And the book to do it from is this one here by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Mitch Weiss, The Heart of Hell. We've talked about it several times on the show. Go back and look at some of the episodes we've had Dennis Blocker on, as it's kind of because of him and his grandfather, the story as to why that's how the book came to be. But, there's so much to it there that one movie could not do it. There's so many ties with Yarborough and Eddie Jones and just falling in love through letters. They'd never actually met. And I think those letters back and forth were transcribed, and I believe they were published up there in Montevallo, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's a lot of material here. There's a lot of characters that you just you want to know. It could be the Navy's version to me of Band of Brothers if it was, as Camilla said, quote unquote, done right. So that's my 2 cents on that one. And Camilla, thanks again for emailing us. We always love to hear what y'all have to say.
I'm going to go next, and this is a book we've brought up on the show, and it's actually a book where one of the very first authors I ever interviewed, going back to the early days of the show, which was the author Gregory A. Freeman. And this is not only a great story, but I think it would be a different type of World War II movie because of the different aspects, and that would be The Forgotten 500. And here's just a quick synopsis. In 1944, the OSS set out to recover more than 500 downed airmen trapped behind enemy lines in Yugoslavia. Classified for over a half a century for political reasons, the full account of the unforgettable story of loyalty, self-sacrifice, and bravery is now being told for the first time. And the political side of it is you find out that the early organizers of the OSS. You know, their whole thing was, we want talented people. We don't care about their political views. And so some open communists got involved. And when this rescue mission in Yugoslavia was taking place, they had their own little civil war going on between two factions, one of them being a communist base and one of them being more of a trying to stay more republic or democratic. And so, as you can expect, the pro-communist members of the OSS didn't want to do the mission in a way that it would be favorable for the opposite side in the Civil War. And so you had this back and forth going on. You had these civilians that were risking themselves from the Germans by hiding these American downed pilots and these Allied downed pilots. And then the fact that they literally had to clear an area of woods on this mountainside to make an airport big enough for this craft to land, pick them up, and then take off again, but do it with hand tools so that the German patrols wouldn't detect them working on this project. The whole story is just amazing. So I think that would be kind of a cool, I don't know if it would be a movie or maybe, I don't know, you could probably get away with like a 7-part miniseries. It wouldn't be a 12-part like a Band of Brothers, but I think it'd be an interesting little, because there's a lot of character development, a lot of heroes in that, and I think it'd be a pretty cool, different style World War II movie or series to watch. Henry?
Well, obviously, glad to have seen the Pacific and Band of Brothers, the Pacific especially with the adaptation of With the Old Breed. But I tell you, this just came to me. Forget what was done in the 70s, okay? If you could take the technology that we have, the ability to portray things accurately, I would love to see a really quality series on the Black Sheep Squadron.
Yeah.
VMF 214. I mean, to take that, I'm not talking about Robert Conn. I mean, I love that show, obviously had some flaws, but Bruce Gamble, my friend Bruce Gamble wrote a great book on the Black Sheep Squadron a number of years ago. I've read it. I want to read it again. But to see that really done right, that would be something I'd love to see.
So, in your remake, when it comes to principal characters, do we go with well-known actors, or do we keep the template with a Band of Brothers and Pacific, with the exception?
Yeah.
Would you kind of go with a no-name or lesser-known actor so it doesn't bump you as much?
I would say go with a lesser-known. But here's the thing. I mean, I grew up thinking the Black Sheep Squadron, it said they were misfits and screwballs. Well, for those of us who love the history and started to peel the layers of the onion back, you didn't have to go very far to learn that was not the case at all. That was pure Hollywood. These guys were college graduates. They went on to achieve good things in their lives. They were sharp young men. And I would like to see maybe that explored a little more than, well, they were misfits and screwballs and always cutting up and carrying on. And, let's move away from that and talk about the other. Because a lot of those guys, History Channel did a lot with this. And you heard some of those guys talk about, we were portrayed in that TV series as being screw-ups. And that was not the case at all.
Henry, have you read this one here? Once They Were Eagles.
I have that. I haven't read it yet, but I do have it.
That's exactly what it reminded me of. That's exactly what these guys talk about in here. They were not just criminals and misfits. And it was how and Boyington had a lot to do with it.
He did.
In making the show, but it is what it is. It made good TV.
Yeah, and it was back in the 70s. I mean, we had Chips and Fantasy Island, man. I mean, but yes, I would love to see. But that book, yeah, I've got that. I think I got it for myself Christmas a year ago. I just haven't read it yet. But I would love to see something really done quality with great Corsairs, the perfect detailing about VMF 214. And Don, to answer your question, I would go with lesser-known actors.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to look up some information here for this next question I have.
And thank you, Camilla, for the email also. I should have said that. Is it Camilla or Camille?
Well, maybe she'll write us back. Yeah, I thought it was Camilla.
No, I think it's Camilla.
Yeah.
Always appreciate our folks reaching out.
When we watch these World War II movies, regardless of when they're recorded, whether they're from the 60s and 70s with, actors who were there, but now they're in their older age of, got the Clint Eastwood movies, you got the John Wayne movies. One of the things that it's a misrepresentation, but it is what it is, and that is the actor's age. They're usually 30s, 40s, and this and that. I was trying to look to see how old Joseph was when he did the Pacific. Do you think it would be weird or odd, maybe not for us as aficionados and people who are knowledgeable on the subject, but do you think it would be weird for the general public at large if they did a World War II movie with truly age-appropriate actors, seeing 17 and 18-year-olds on the screen, especially ones who look like they're 14 and 15? Do you think that would bump them a little bit? Because we're so used to seeing these hero roles played by 28, 30-year-old actors when we're watching these movies. Do you think people could handle a full-length movie where the NCO of the platoon is 20, 19, 21?
It'd be interesting. It's thought-provoking.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately thought of Richard Jackal in the wartime films. He was 17, 18 years old, and some of that. I think of Guadalcanal Diary. Maybe he was 17 when he played Chicken Anderson. But you're right, because it does I think it does kind of put a false sense of reality when you do see these films, and for young impressionable people like me going into the military, I didn't expect my NCOs to be such baby faces as some of them were. Not that they weren't good NCOs, but they certainly did not look like Randolph Scott. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's a great point, Don. I think it's something that I'm sure is talked about in probably every production phase of war films, but at the same time, you want your civilian audience to also take them seriously and understand that these guys had authority, and sometimes a pimply-faced 19-year-old kid that got a battlefield is not gonna do that for you.
Yeah. Well, the reason
on the big screen, whereas,
Well, the reason I bring it up is there's that famous. I'm trying to browse for it right now. Not that I could post it on our website because we get dinged for copyright. But there's this one picture from D-Day where the cameraman's taking a picture down into the landing craft, and there's that one. They're all looking at the camera, but there's that one young cat. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. He looks like he couldn't be a day over 12 and a half. And you're like, holy hell, they were kids. Especially now that, it's weird. I jokingly say the older I get, the younger old gets. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, huge fan of Young Guns and Young Guns 2.
Oh, yeah.
Huge fans of Tombstone and all those. Now I'm 45 and I go back and watch that and see a 21-year-old Emilio Estevez or Charlie Sheen. It's like, holy shit, those guys were young when they did this movie. But as a fifth grader, they look like old men. But now that I'm on that other side and I'm going back and watch these old movies, you realize how young they were when they played those characters, because those characters were young, but younger than they were. But just even that transition of watching something when you're a kid versus watching again when you're older, like, it's crazy how the appearance of time affects you when looking at someone. When you're like, once again, you're 13, you look at somebody 22, he's an old man. You're 40, you're looking at an 18, you're like, wow, that dude's a kid. And so it would be interesting to see how people would react and think, well, that just seems unbelievable. Actually, that's more reality than all of the shows we've seen. I mean, Band of Brothers did a good job of trying to find some younger of the supporting cast and all that, but even a lot of how old was Ron Livingston when he shot Band of Brothers? I mean, he had already done quite a few projects.
Yeah, he'd already done Office Space.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this. I mean, I remember my dad always talk about it. He was 20, turned 21 on Peleliu. And so many of those guys, 18, 19, 20, most Marines on average were a little bit younger than their Army counterparts. But when you look at archival footage of Peleliu 2 weeks into the battle, man, those guys they look
40.
So much older. Yeah. And when you think, man, if you took that beard off that guy's face and cleaned him up, he'd be 20. And yet he looks so much older right there.
It's interesting. About 2 years ago, in the height of the pandemic, maybe 3, when TikTok was really starting to change and pick up because people had time, there was this video where this woman took a photo. She found a photo of like 3 or 4 young women. They're probably 30, 32. And the TikToker herself was like 40. And she's like, I'm 40. The women in this photo are 32. And this photo is from like 1953 or whatever. And she's talking about how they all look like they're in their 60s.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I stitched this. Well, you got to remember, one, nowadays we have all these different, vitamins, preservatives, better medicine. I said, but two, that's a generation of people who grew up during the Great Depression. Then their brothers, their fathers, their uncles went off to war. They lived a bunch of stress. And then the Korean War. I mean, the span of time in which those people, what they experienced in their short 30 years on Earth was a hell of a lot stressful than what we're dealing with. And it's crazy how you go back and look at photos, even from the 70s. You look at yearbook photos from the 70s, and that kid's 17, but he looks like he's 24. It's just so weird how they definitely seemed older back then, especially after you were saying, after a couple of weeks of combat, you just look so much older.
Well, you remind me of a time where when I was working at the Nimitz is when I really felt we were really doing something right. It was right at the end of closing the program. We had just had our passing review of all the companies. And, again, today, I don't know, they're kind of scaling some things back, but and I still encourage people to go, but it was definitely not the amount of, volunteers that we had when I was there. It was pre-COVID. It was kind of a different time. The pool from active duty personnel. And I remember at the end, the whole past review, and this woman, she was kind of sitting up front. She seemed very engaged in the whole thing, right? So she comes up to me. I mean, she's just like, she's been crying and she's just so emotional. And she said, through her like sobs, she said what stuck out to her the most, she said, I just can't believe how young these guys look. She said, they just look like they're so young, like they're too young to be in uniform. And I just kind of smiled. I said, ma'am, most of these guys are
in uniform
duty service members. They're soldiers, they're Marines, they're sailors, coasties. Even had a couple Air Force guys. I said, that's how it was. That these guys are serving our country right now. Yes, they look so young because they are young, and that's exactly what it was like in that pickle war. It's a young man's job.
But the people who lead those men,
important.
The people who are in front of the cameras are always so much older, so we just assume everybody's their age. But no, that's not the case.
Yeah, and but Henry brings up a great point too, and I'm trying to remember the German pilot. There was several photographs taken of a German pilot from the First World War that were taken, I think, only 4 or 6 months apart, and you would swear you were looking at a father and a son. The change is so drastic, and I mean it's a rabbit hole I don't want to go into now at the end of the episode. But if I can find it, I'll pull it up and show you guys. Maybe we can talk about it. It's just what combat did, and it is unbelievable. The change physically changed this man's face in just a few months. Unbelievable.
That would be a good topic because I think a few years ago a photo project came out where a Life, Rolling Stone, whoever, an AP photographer got a hold of some recently just graduated from boot camp, got like 7 or 8 of them, black and white photo, just right in their face, and then got a hold of them after they came back from their combat deployment a year, whatever, depending on what happened to them, and then took photos and put them side by side. And it looks like it was only 3 years, but it looked like a 10-year gap because of what the stress did to them. And that would be a definitely good conversation. We're going to wrap up the show real quick with what you're reading. Hey, Jeff, you're always got your nose in the wonderful smell of a binding on a actual book. What you reading?
Well, it hasn't changed much since last week because, I'm knee deep in this Greece course. So finished Homer's The Odyssey. Yay. Still getting through Virgil's The Aeneid and the story of Greece and Rome. So very boring, dry. If you love ancient Greece like I do, it's still sometimes dry and boring. But I'm 267 days from my trip to Greece, and it's going to be so much more enjoyable because of this course. I'm not going to lie, but it is eating my lunch, guys. I will admit that. This is a healthy course.
That reminds me of a new trending thing on TikTok. For some reason, the thing is, go up to your husband or boyfriend and ask them how many times a day they think of the Roman Empire, And sadly for me, I zero. I never think of it, but apparently every other dude out there apparently thinks of the Roman Empire multiple times a day, but me, not so much. Hey, Henry, what you reading?
Well, currently, like I said earlier, reading James Holland's book, Brothers in Arms, about the Sherwood Rangers. Right before that, I read a book by Bruce Gamble it was called, it was about Rabaul. He actually wrote a trilogy on Rabaul, starting with when the Australians garrisoned it, and then the Japanese took it at the beginning, early 42. And I haven't read the other two volumes yet, but right now, Brothers in Arms by James Holland, about the Sherwood Rangers Sherman Tank Unit.
I think last week we were talking about how I occasionally go into my Amazon list and find books that I put in there during the show, and I just started
George P. Hunt.
Yep, Coral Comes High, and so far, really, really good book. I think it serves you right every once in a while to go and read a really honest, brutal book, just to because after a while, you read so much about World War II, you need a reminder of how horribly gruesome this thing was, and this is another book that kind of reminds you of that.
He was 1st Marines, correct?
Correct.
That was one of the early, that thing came out in the 50s, didn't it?
The publishing date on this is 1946, so it was even before that.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that old. I thought it had come out in the 50s.
Yep. And so that's going to wrap it up for this. And obviously, as I finish this book, I'll go more deeper into it. We've kind of run long tonight, and I know some of our devices are getting weak on battery power. But we want to thank each and every one of you for hanging out with us for another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. And as we said earlier, please head over to WTSP World War II. Click on the link, sign up for all the stuff, and find us on YouTube as well. For myself, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge, we will talk to you all next week.
This has been a Digital 410 production.